Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. And remember, if you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, check out my information and book a call with me at offthecomma.com. And I'm also doing something different. I'm curating my own sponsor community, local businesses and professionals who I handpick and who align with our vision here. Be sure to check them out, learn more about them on my website and my YouTube channel. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Off the Comma. I'm very excited to be able to continue to do this work and to be able to feature all these amazing people that we are so fortunate to have had on this podcast since we began well over a year ago. And this week is no exception. In fact, I'm really excited about this week. Once again, we're going to be meeting somebody who is new to me and that I get to meet for the first time and learn about them through their story today. And his name is Aaron Burros, and I'm particularly excited to meet and learn about Aaron because not sure if it's going to show up in his story or not, but Aaron is a runner and I have a long history with running. So already we've got something that kind of we share in common, but I'm going to stop rambling now. Aaron, I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome to the show. Tell us, how would you like to be known and what would you like for folks to know about you before we get started?
I would like to be known as Big Sexy.
I love it.
But that's what I would like to be known. However, my homegirls may say something a little different about that. my running community back in Houston at Terry Hershey Park. However, I have become known as the running servant. The running servant, because people would always say, you always running and serving somewhere. Because I would go to races and I would see stuff needing to be done and I would just help out and, just kick in because I know what it's like to put on events. I used to put on big conferences back in the day, and you really depend upon volunteers. And a lot of times, not all your volunteers show up. And so even though you've had people say, yeah, I'm going to be there, they don't show up. And it's just like, hey, you're scrambling and you need somebody to just come in and that can help out without having to give too much direction. So I would always show up like that. And then also I did a lot of pacing because I was an ultra marathoner. So I did a lot of pacing. Yeah, I would pace half marathons. Shout outs to the Bayou City half in Houston, run Houston. But I would just do a lot of pacing. And then when I went around the country, I would pace full marathons. And I would just do that to stay conditioned. And so that's what I would do as far as the pacing was concerned. And so people just would like, you run and serve. And then people started calling me different names, but the run and servant stuck the most. My trail community, they call me Nipples. And, that's because I wasn't a runner growing up. I picked it up late in life and I was running around with cotton shirts on in Houston, Texas. And one day I looked down and I seen all this blood on the front of my shirt. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I had cancer.
Only runners. And I hope it's okay. I'll jump in from time to time, Aaron, and you can kick me back out if I ever do so when you're in mid thought. But I think only runners will really appreciate this because I'll never forget the time I did a 10K and was walking around afterwards, just like in all my glory in November, proud as I could be of finishing. And it was not until I got home that I saw in the mirror with the white cotton running shirt, the big red rings around my nipples.
And I had the tears going down.
No.
I didn't even have big red rings. It was like they were crying.
Oh, no.
And so I inboxed one of my homeboys and I was like, hey, I got to ask you something. Cause I was afraid to ask anybody. And I sent him the picture, you know, my selfie with him on. Man, he was dying laughing, LOL me, you know, ROTFLs and everything else.
You know what I'm also hearing, Aaron, though, and what you're describing. So first, I know we're just so far, and I know we're just getting started, is like this level of like just realness in you. Like, hey, I am what I am, right? I'm here to serve, and you get what you get. I'm getting a flavor of that so far.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm that type of person. I'm all in or all out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't like people to make my decisions for me. So I don't make other people's decisions for them. So they get me, you know, they don't get a representative. They get me raw and uncut, you know, and then you go from there. So they call me Nipples on the with trail running over Texas. Shout out to my homeboy, Rob Goen, who started that and introduced me to like the passion for trail running. And then let's see, I was called Happy Feet because I ran everywhere. I was also called, the Run Doc, because I would help people with their running. And if they had runner's injuries, I would talk to them about how to, you know, get rid of them, adjust their stride, their cadence, different things. So I was taught that. And then I was called Park Ranger because I would take groups out on runs, on trail runs and stuff. And so people call me Park Ranger. Man, I've had so many names, I done forgot them all. But
well, you just fed me about 5 or 6 hashtags already. So I'm underlining these words as I'm taking notes. Aaron, I love it. I love it. And I'd love to get into your story too. And I also want to respect your time too, because I know you're at the airport.
Oh, we good.
Awesome.
We good. I'm here. You know, this is what it's about. You know, I want to inspire. I want to ignite. I want to invigorate others. I want to push people to, you know, in my situation, don't wait for a tragedy. I mean, that's not what got me into running, but don't wait for a tragedy to happen before you start pursuing your passion. Mm-hmm. What brings you joy, what you would live and die for, what you were going to suffer behind. And so that's what that's my main thing is whether people are struggling with mental health issues like I was, health issues, being obese, that's what got me to running to begin with, is I was almost 400 pounds, you know, and I went to go get my 40th checkup for my birthday. My dad's family, prostate cancer is a real issue. And my baby sister, always be on the guys to go get 40. You turning 40, go get your prostate checked. And so I went and got my prostate checked. Everything came back cool. And then the doctor looked at me. He said, but there's one thing. He said, you need to lose 40 pounds or it's going to lose you. And that's what got me started. I mean, I was an athlete back in high school, played basketball, played football. I knew what it is to work out, lift weights, be disciplined. But later in life, when you're not doing that on a regular basis, it was hard to get started back. And so I remember gas prices was going high. People's pay was going low. My car broke down. I was like, you know what? I'm not getting it fixed. I purposely moved 2 miles away from my job so that I had to walk 30 minutes to work, 30 minutes home. And then on top of that, I would go out and try to run. And so I would start it off by doing 15 minutes until where I could get to running 15 minutes straight. And then when I got to 15, I added another 5. So 15 turned it into 20, 20 to 25, 30 to 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. Ready or not, here I come. And so when I got to where I could run an hour nonstop, I added a 10-minute interval. When I got to 10, I went to 20, 20 to 30, 40, 50, 2 hours. I was running 2 hours. And then I went to 15 minutes intervals, 2 hours and 15 minutes. When I could do that comfortably, I went to 2:30. When I could do that, 2:45 to 3 hours. And then once I hit 3 hours, I didn't look back.
Aaron, I love the background and the history that you're giving us. I want to jump in with the questions too, and it sounds like you're kind of already getting started on your story a little bit. But let me, before we get to the questions, one thing I always do with every guest is, and I think you've already given it to us actually. I'd like to ask, as you think about the conversation ahead, what's your intention for yourself for the next 40 minutes or so? It sounds like you've already given us that. Inspire, ignite, help people realize not to wait for a tragedy. Is there anything else that you would add to that in terms of your intention?
Yeah, I want people to become the CEO of their own health and well-being. I want people to take ownership. And that's one thing that I had to do in the situation that we'll discuss is I had to become the CEO of my own health care.
Mm-hmm.
And I made it very clear to my health professionals because I would come and so much stuff had happened. And so I would come to a point where I literally had to have talks with my doctors, my healthcare providers on every level and say, listen, you work for me. I don't work for you.
Mm-hmm.
You getting paid because of my insurance. You getting paid because I have insurance. You getting paid because I have a need. Now, I need your expertise, but understand that I make the final decision concerning my health. And they were like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
And so some of them, it didn't sit well with them because they used to wanting to do what they want to do. But I was desperate.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the story. Let me jump in. I've got the 5 questions, the same 5 questions that I ask every guest. And you and I haven't talked about what you're going to share, so it'll be fresh for me as well. The first question, Aaron, is where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
The last 8 years. And to be honest with you, when you introduced the show, I was thinking to myself, but God, because the last 8 years was a comma for me. I'm on the other side of that comma. And the story is being written. I mean, this is part of what's being written. I don't know what the next page is going to be. I don't know what the next chapter is going to be. But for 8 years, I could tell you what it was, and it was miserable.
Tell us a little bit about it, because some of the questions that will follow will ask about what's next and that sort of thing. Yeah. We'll get to that in organic time. This is your space. Tell us a little bit about what it was like, whatever you're comfortable sharing. But what was it like sitting on that comma for 8 years? It sounds like you've alluded a little bit to it, but tell us what's important for us to know from your point of view.
Well, I can tell you where I thought the story was going before the 8 years, and I was in a place where running had became very therapeutic for me. I was in big box retail management. And if people don't know what big box retail management is, those stores that you go in and you need to take walk breaks because they so big.
Yeah. Like Home Depot and Target,
Home Depot,
and
Lowe's,
Walmart,
Targets, IKEA. If you got an IKEA, if you know what IKEA is. Mm-hmm. So I was in those type of management. And so running had really not only lost weight and became healthier, but running became therapy for me. So I would work 8 to 12 hour days, go home, take a shower, throw on my running stuff, and go for 2 hour run, 3 hour run. And so as I began to do that and did my trail running, I didn't know what I was doing, but I began to get people that would literally tell me, man, you moving. For a big dude, you moving. I mean, I had pro athletes, semi-pro athletes, other professional people that were in the running community was like, man, your times are, did you ever run cross country? Did you ever run track? I'm like, man, please, I ain't getting on that hamster wheel. And the only running I ever had previously was in sports was a form of discipline, punishment, because somebody jumped off sides, you threw an interception, somebody fumbled, or, somebody missed free throws, whatever. So everything was running to discipline. So I never found pleasure in running up until this point. But I remember my pastor asked me one day, he said, "Big man," that's another nickname, Big Man. He said, "Big man," he said, "have you ever thought about running professionally?" Well, in my mind, I'm thinking of the Boston Marathon because I grew up in Akron, Ohio, West Side. Shout out LeBron James. Mm-hmm. Whether you love him or hate him, he's still from Akron, Ohio. That's where I was born. But anyway, only thing I knew was Boston Marathon because everybody watched the Boston Marathon. And so I'm like, man, I'm not that small. I ain't run that fast. And so my pastor started laughing. And he's like, "No, I'm talking about trail running, what you're doing." And so I ended up doing, I'm in the middle of an interview. Oh, you support me? Well, say hi.
Hello, brother. I was just telling this brother right here that I was 500 pounds, and 5 years ago I had weight loss surgery, and now I'm 192 pounds. And I want to commend this brother on his endeavors.
I want to challenge you to do a marathon.
I got rods and spaces and screws in my back. I can't run.
You can walk.
I can walk.
That's what you can do.
You got a car too?
No, I got to do this interview.
All right, I got to catch a flight to Seattle.
You're going to Seattle?
Yeah.
Okay, look me up online. The Running Servant.
The Running Servant?
Yeah, all you got to do is put The Running Servant and you'll find me. Yeah.
I was getting ready to make a note and edit that out. I'm leaving that whole conversation in. I think that's just beautiful. So
that's what it's about.
Yeah. It's for our listeners' benefit, because they're not able to see what was happening. So Aaron's sitting in a quiet area in the airport, and a man heard his interview with us and walked up to acknowledge him. That's what you just heard. And so that's awesome. That's really cool. I have to acknowledge you for, even in the telling of your story, other people hearing it, you're inspiring other people just through the retelling of the story.
Yes.
Nice.
So he just found me online. He just Googled The Running Servant. All my stuff pops up.
I love it.
He just found me online, and he's connecting with me on social media already. His name is Tony. Shout out to Tony.
Hello, Tony.
This is exactly what I was saying is that, so my pastor was like, he had a friend that was a professional running coach. And he was like, are you willing to talk to him? I was like, yeah. So I go talk to him. His name was Andy Stewart. And God rest his soul. Andy passed, went home to be with the Lord during COVID, one of the victims of COVID. And so he had a store out in Sugar Land, Texas called Finish Line Sports. And so Andy taught a lot of people from like little kids starting to run track to professional people who ran for the Western states. So we talked and he told me about running and this and that. And I was like, that sounds interesting. But then he told me, there's a lot of money to be made in that. I said, what's a lot? And so when he told me I could make over six figures running and competitively, and that if I do real good, that I can get endorsement deals, I was like, sign me up. So that's when I signed up for the Brazos Bend 100 in Texas, the Trot family, trail running over Texas. And I signed up for the Brazos Bend 100. I was going to do the 50 miler, and I was going to run with some other professional runners because they had just got USTAF certified course and everything. And so they had a bunch of people coming down to compete, and it was going to be part of the Western states and all this stuff. And so I was looking forward to running with some professional runners to see if I could keep up with these guys. That would have been my benchmark so that he could start planning my training. And I was looking forward to it. But rewind a little bit because that was going to be December, I think, 3rd, 4th, and 5th weekend of 2015. But 2 weeks before, I was at work and got a page over the intercom, and my boss, him and I were the 2 managers in the building, and he was with an urgent plea asking for all male employees to help at a particular area of the building. And so I was in another part of the building, and I went outside, and I was going to come back in to the other part where he was asking for the help. Well, just then, this huge melee, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Don't want to sound more intelligent than I am. Commotion, they come busting out the door, and it's a fight it's a life and death struggle going on. And then as I'm approaching this, I hear this guy tell someone to go get the tool and put in work. And I was like, that's not good. Now, you remember, I told you I grew up in West Side, Akron, Ohio, in the city of Hills, pimp players and hustlers, back in the 70s and 80s, we playing kickball and Indian ball on the street and people getting, I'm a little kid, but, people getting shot next to us, grown people, we finding dead bodies in the alley and stuff. So I didn't grow up, with a silver spoon in my mouth. So I understood something was going down. And so I ended up starting to tell people to get in the building. And then, these days, people don't want to listen. You can't tell me what to do. Everybody want to see what's going on. And so I'm just telling people, I can't worry about them. They listen. If they don't, they don't. So I make it over to the crowd, where the struggle was going on. And there's several employees trying to help the security guy. And there's another guy, and he's trying to get something out of his waistband or his pocket. And I'm pulling people off, like, get in the building, hurry up, get in the building. And people looking like they're confused or what. And then all of a sudden, this guy appears from the shadows and he starts shooting. Well, now everybody running to get in the building. And there's 3 other guys that's still holding the security guy, and 2 other people still holding this other guy because he's trying to get something. And at this point, I'm like, okay, it has to be a gun, a weapon of some sort. And so I pull 2 of them off. And as I'm pulling them off, the other guy, the security guy, gets up with the other assailant, and I'm trying to pull them apart, but the guy's holding them. And so I pick them up and body slam them to try to break them loose. And I'm pulling the guy off, and I tell him, the security guy to get in the building. At this time, the other guy then pulled him off of the security guy and got him by his neck like this. And I'm wrestling with my right hand with him trying not to get into his pocket. So as I got him like this, and he's in front of me, shielding me from the guy with the gun. And I'm sitting there like, all right, everything's over. Y'all going about your business. I'm going to, let the dude go. And so the guy that I'm holding in front of me got him by the neck with my left arm wrapped around his neck. He tells the other guy to shoot me. And I'm thinking to myself, dummy, you in front of me. Where are you going to shoot me at? But he shoots me in the upper left torso of my rib cage area. The bullet hits me. Fortunately, it ricocheted off my rib cage, took a chunk of skin out. Just then, the guy that I'm holding, he rears back to try to buck me with his head so he can get away. But I'm realizing that if he does that, then it's just going to be open season on me. So I pull him, and I'm falling backwards. He falls back on top of me. And then the guy is still telling him to shoot me. And so the guy walks up, and he's telling me to let his Negro go. He didn't say it that nice, but he told me to let him go. And I was like, I let him go. I'm laying down on the ground, my back against the pavement. My legs are bent. My feet are flat to the ground. My hands are up. I'm like, hey, y'all go ahead and go. This is over. You can hear the police coming in the background and everything. By the way, I would find out later that the police went to another location and bum rushed another building with their guns out, thinking they were going to the right location because of, and to this day, it's still messed up in the Google Maps. Not to Google's fault, but whoever using whatever. It could be Waze or it can be any of them. But in Houston, on the West Park Tollway, if you put the address in, it takes you to another location. Mm. And so they bust into this other place with guns drawn, looking for, the shooting, only to find out that they went 5 miles past us. But during that time, the guy, he gets up, he tells the guy with the gun to go ahead and kill me. So the guy walks up closer to me and he tells me, I bet you next time somebody tell you to let their Negro go, you let him go. And I'm sitting there, and just then it's like everything slowed down. And I got to thinking to myself, and it must have only been maybe 2-3 seconds, but it slowed down. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm about to die. And I'm like, Lord, is this what it's like before somebody murder you? I had so much peace.
Wow.
I thought about my 401k. I thought about my car, my house. I thought about my Steve Madden shoes, my Brooks shoes. I thought about, my Specialized bike. I thought about, I'm just poking fun. I didn't think about none of that stuff. I thought about my kids. I have 5 kids, 2 daughters, 3 sons. I thought about who was going to tell them. Mm-hmm. How were they going to find out? How were they going to take it? Who's going to help them through this? Because for me, I got a guy standing over me, point blank range, with what I have come to realize later through therapy and some other stuff, that it was a .22 rifle that he had. And this guy about to kill me, and I'm about to go home and be with Jesus. I'm worried about my kids. And so he goes to pull the trigger, and my eyes are drawn to his finger. And I was raining outside, misting, like drizzle raining. So the lamps post from the rain was more of a halo. My face is wet. It was like a movie. And I'm looking at his finger go back slowly. And then at one point, the Holy Spirit of God tells me to roll over. And I do. And everything speeds up. And I hear the gunshot. Before then, I couldn't hear anything. It was like a vacuum. And I couldn't hear anything but my thoughts and me talking to God. He tells me to roll over. I roll over. Everything speeds up. I hear the gunshot. I hear the bullet ricochet off the ground that if I had not rolled over would have hit a center mass, because this is where he was pointing.
And you're pointing to the center of your heart. People can't see you, but you're pointing right to the center of your chest.
Center chest.
Yeah.
The diaphragm. So I go to roll over. He misses. And then I hear the Holy Spirit tell me, get up and run. So I get up and I run. Now, this is a trip because while I'm running, I'm thinking about when I played quarterback for A-Leaf Elsik High School. Shout out to the Mighty Rams. We got a lot of people in the NFL right now. Shout out to the Mighty Rams. I'm thinking about handing the football off to the running backs and how the coach used to tell them to stay low, give them a small target so that they can't hit you. And so that's what I did. I stayed low and I ran towards the door, which they had locked. And I'm just running full speed towards this door, yelling, open the door, because I'm about to hit it. And so I see my boss, he's telling people that's on the side to put a door open because it slides, two-sided doors. When you go in the hospital, how they open up, similar thing. So it slides open. I dive in. They close it back real quick. The guy behind me, he's banging on the door. He's yelling to people, let me in so I can kill him. Let me in so I can kill him. And it was just crazy.
Wow.
It was crazy.
I just have to acknowledge you for a moment. I mean, and thank you for sharing even this part of the story so far. But like, you have experienced something that most people in our country, in our world, are only ever going to be able to connect with through a television or through a screen in their hand. Not only did you experience that, but here you are today telling us about it. And I mean, just that whole experience is, I mean, just wow, is all I can really say. And how glad I am that you're here telling that story to me and everybody who's going to be listening.
Oh, man, that's like the opening scene to Fast and Furious, right? It's just the eye catcher, but there was so much more that would happen over the next several years. That was just crazy. But before I get to that, the adrenaline is rushing. Now, the ambulance and the police finally get there. They come in, and there was some people that was hit, grazed with bullets. I remember as I was running in, and they pulled this one guy. It was two guys pulling this one guy in, and he was dragging him backwards, but they were going forward, and he was screaming. He had got shot in the calf. And but I remember the medics in the fire department and the EMS workers, they asked, had I been shot? They were in the building, and I was like, yes. And they're like, take your clothes off. We're like at the front of the building. Everybody's there. Mm-hmm. And it's like at that moment, I'm looking around, seeing all these people. And I'm like, I'm not about to take my clothes off, in front of all these people. So what do? I make a joke. I said, now y'all really want to make all these women happy? I said, because if I take my clothes off, they're going to get real happy up in here. And so, I'm trying to deal with everything that's going on. So they take us out, and me and the security guy, because I think he got shot as well. And we go out into the ambulance. And while we're in there, we strip down, and they're looking for these entry rooms. They kept asking me, they couldn't find anything. They was like, are you sure you got hit? And I'm like, yes, I can feel the metal burning in me. I mean, it was still hot. From all that time when I got shot, I could feel the metal in me still hot. And so I was telling them where. So finally, one guy found an entry wound. And the other guy that was taking my vitals, he was like, well, we were going to have to take him to the hospital anyway. He said, because his blood pressure is 268 over 200.
No surprise.
Yeah, it was up there. So they take me to the hospital. I get to the hospital. I'm calling my dad. I'm calling my kids, call my mom, different people. And my family rushes up there. And I'm sitting up in there, and I'm trying to make sense of it all. It's just a lot. And so it was a whole lot to take in. So I'm being jokey because I'm a people's person. I got a male nurse. They tell me what's going on. They're like, hey, we're going to get you. We're going to get a CAT scan done of you. I think they did an MRI. I'm not sure. I think they did. And I came back. They did the CAT scan, the MRI. And they came back, and I was complaining about, and I think that's what it was. They did the MRI, and then I started complaining about some irritation on the inner left thigh.
Mm-hmm.
And so the nurse, he put my leg back, looked inside my thigh, and he came up and he had a bullet fragment.
Oh, wow.
That was sticking out. Now, I don't think it was there like right away, but I think because of the magnetism of the MRI, that it started pulling it out. So he was able to pull that out with his finger.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, we're going to have to send you to get an x-ray. So to make sure there's no other, fragments in there. And so I go get the x-ray, and he comes back after the x-ray. He said, man, that bullet missed your femoral artery by 1 centimeter. He said, had it hit, he said, you would have bled out. The ambulance wouldn't even made it to you in time.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be dead.
Mm.
And I didn't know how sobering that would be till years later, like 2 years ago, when I went and I had to get an ultrasound of my veins. And the vein doctor was showing the technician where the scar tissue was and where how close the bullet came to my femoral artery. I actually got to see it with the ultrasound, and it was so sobering.
Wow.
It was so sobering to realize that the sovereignty or the providence of God, that I was just a centimeter away from dying.
And the divine influence in your story at that point, right? The voices, the very clear commands that you were given, and what to do with those is super powerful.
Had I not did it, I would have been dead.
Yeah.
I mean, I had resolved that I was dying, that I was going to literally be murdered.
Mm-hmm.
I was there. And then on top of that, to see that later on, but I remember the aggravated robbery homicide detective came up to the hospital, and he said to me, I heard you a runner. And I was like, yeah. He's like, man, he said, your coworkers tell me you run everywhere. Like you do some running. I was like, yeah. He said, yeah, they told me you used to be 400 pounds. I said, almost. I was 394. It's like, man. He was like, you lost a lot of weight. I said, yeah. He said, if you had still been weighing the same amount, he said, there was no way you would have hopped to your feet and ran like you did.
Mm-hmm. That occurred to me when you were telling the story, like how running obviously shows up, like all this work you had put into running. And that is very much the thing that contributed to saving your life.
Saved my life once with the weight, saved my life during the shooting, and what comes to save my life again.
You are a natural storyteller, and I love it. So I'd love to go to the second question as it relates to this part of the story. And you can kind of take us where you want to, but I've got 4 more questions left as part of our conversation. The second question is, as you look at sitting on this comma that you've been telling us about, what did it create for you? You've kind of described the incidents, but what did all of this create for you as a result?
The subsequent incidents that continue, even before, this is before the comma, because right now I'm sitting just after the comma. What it created for me that put me before the comma to where I was in a position to be sitting on the comma. I was sitting on the couch one day, and I said to myself, if I don't do something to shock myself to get my life back, my son is going to come home and find me dead on a couch from sadness and depression. So I was like, I got to do something. And so I began to work with my psychologist and psychiatrist. And like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And we talked about a lot of different stuff. And I'm like, no, that's not going to work. No, that's not going to work. No, that's not going to work. And he's like, well, what do you think will work? I said, running.
Mm-hmm.
I said, it saved my life once, and I believe it has saved my life again. I got to get some hope moving. I had hope. I had hope in the Lord, but I had to get some hope living life again, moving, something tangible, then battling depression, sleep deprivation, hallucination, anxiety, depressive moods, crying spells. I needed to live again. So I went on a quest to do 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 weeks.
Wow.
And it turned out to be for my 50th birthday, but it wouldn't have been for my 50th birthday except for COVID. Because the year that I started to do the quest, COVID came in and everything started canceling. So I couldn't even get the first marathon done, which was in my state of Houston, Texas. And so I ended up realizing quickly, I'm going to have to cancel this if this keeps going on. And then when they shut the airlines down, except for essential personnel, I was like, yeah, we're going to have to wait on this, which I have progressive muscle weakness because I still got a bullet in my right gluteus maximus. And so that year made it even harder for me to do this quest. So I went to do the quest in 2022. Remember, COVID shut everything down in 2020. So I went to do the quest in 2022 to 2023. And that's when I had put my team together. My psychologist, my psychiatrist, my primary care physician. I had a physical therapist. I was getting physical therapy. I had a massage therapist. And then I had 2 trainers. I had one trainer that worked with me on my muscle mind connection. And then I had another trainer that worked with me on strength training to get me through everything. And it was very, very, very difficult.
Yeah, it sounds like that was a big challenge. I mean, just the getting ready to even run the races was a significant part of the work.
Yes. And to maintain that, because what I found out very quick is that what I had in my mind wasn't what was going to happen with my feet. And it was very, very humbling. I came across so many challenges. I began to learn what triggers really were. COVID had changed the world. I did a race. I remember where they did a pistol start, and I was standing right next to the pistol firer, and I didn't know about it. I did a race, and we were about mile 9, and they were having what they called a trap house, which in the South, a trap house was something totally different. But up in the plains, it was a shooting expedition where they were like shooting some big weapons to the point that it wasn't just me. There were veterans out there that was being triggered with their PTSD, and people that had no mental health issues when it came to PTSD. You have people that were out there that would tell the race director that it felt like they were being shot.
Well, not to mention, I mean, this is also post Boston Marathon. So, I mean, anybody could have had an experience just based on kind of the collective memory of what's happened at public events and just the history we have in this country.
There were people that were running that race that was at Boston. So there was a lot of stuff that happened. The triggers were many. The nightmares, the hallucinations, the sleepless nights, the sleep deprivation. So I finally get through this. And so when I begin it, I'm 4 weeks into it, and I get a call from a friend that I met at the Tampa, Florida hot chocolate. and some years before. And he said, man, what's this quest that you're doing? And I told him, he said, are you keeping a diary? I'm like, dude, I'm just trying to brush my teeth every day. She's talking about keeping a diary. I'm like, I'm trying to focus. I'm trying to get through the day. This is, serious. It's hard. And he was like, I understand. So he didn't push it. 2 weeks later, he calls me. He says, do you mind if I do a video with you on Zoom every week and ask you some questions so that you can have this for your children and your children's children and your great-great-grandchildren. You can leave this as some posterity for your family. I said, man, no, that'd be cool. I said, I could talk to you while I'm having my coffee. And so we did that. And then he would go back and work in the other races that I had missed. So we did that. And I'm telling you, it was something phenomenal. Got through everything, got through the races. The more he learned about me, he would go back and, man, you need to write a book. I'm like, dude, I'm still trying to brush my teeth every day.
Yeah.
Just functioning, the basic functions. When you're that depressed, it is hard. And so he learns more about me. He was like, man, this thing needs to be turned into a movie. I'm like, dude, you done went from a diary to a
movie,
a Zoom interview, to a book, to a movie. I said, I tell you what, you find somebody who want to make the movie and we'll make the movie. I said, but right now I'm really just trying to brush my teeth. And that's literally what I was trying to do. I was trying to get hope back in humanity. I was trying to fight against the depression, the PTSD. I was trying to get out of my comfort zone. I had people ask me, well, why didn't you just do the races virtually? Why spend all that money traveling around and staying in hotels and that? And I'm like, you thinking about saving money? I'm trying to save my life. Money didn't mean a thing at that point in time. Plus, God saw fit that the world shut down. So what I ended up doing is I was buying tickets for $29, $39, $49, $59. I didn't pay for a ticket over $99 round trip ticket until I went to Hawaii. And that was $500. But I got through it, went through it, did it. And at the end of it, my friend, Dr. Lauren Murfield, he called me. He said, check your email. I checked my email. He sent me an email, just had an attachment on it. And so I'm downloading the attachment. We're talking. Thing taking forever to download. Finally, I said, man, this thing's still downloading. What you send me, a book? And he was like, well, let me know when it download. And so when it finally download, I opened it up and he had typed up a transcript. He took all the interviews that I did, all the questions that were asked, and he wrote them as though I was writing my answers down as it was me. He did the research for the races. He did everything. And he said, I need you to fact check it, and I need you to put some pictures in there. It took me 6 months to fact check it. Because I was reading for the first time what an exercise that my psychologist wanted me to do that I struggled to do for 5 years. I had to go back and read my own story. And it was hard. It was hard.
What was the hardest part of that experience for you?
Reliving it through my own words. It was one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to come back and read your own words about it. You see it in a different perspective. You see it in a different light. The writing does something to the brain. I remember when I got to the story about my week when I ran Boston, it was hard. That was a hard part of the story. The week when I was in Medford, Wisconsin, doing the Pine Line Marathon. I think it's Pine Line. It's in the book. But it's a rails to trail, and that's where they had that trap house with all the shooting. Now, I fought through it to get to the turnaround. But as I went to go back through, I stopped and I turned around. I looked back at the guys at the turnaround, and I was like, I can't do this. Y'all gonna have to call somebody to come pick me up. I just emotionally, I could not put myself going back through another 4 miles of the shooting. And the closer you got to it, I kid you not, some of the weapons that they were firing, you could feel the recoil. They were about a mile away, but you can feel like the recoil, the vibration from the sound waves hit your body. Yeah. And I thought at first it was just me because of what I went through. But at the end of the race, when we're all sitting around and talking, and people that had never been through what I've been through, had never been in war, like some of the veterans, and this one lady was about in tears. And when she said it felt like she was being shot, that's when I knew. And I remember my prayer partners, when I first went back to church after being shot, all my prayer partners in the men's ministry, they was out front waiting on me. And they loved on me. They laughed at me. They made jokes. And my prayer partner heard, he say, "Hey, y'all," he say, "Bullet butt here." He said he got shot in the butt. And they just laughed and made fun of me and loved on me and hugged me. They cried with me. Man, that felt so good. Shout outs to my church, Friendship Community Bible Church in Sugar Land, Texas. You know, that was the first church. Well, really, that was the first time I've ever seen real men in my life. Not males, but real men, real godly men. And I've been at that church going on 27 years now.
It's so important to be validated, to be heard, to be seen. And it sounds like this community is really not just supported you, but made you feel seen and validated. And I really appreciate how you're explaining and putting light on something that a lot of people wouldn't even care or consider thinking about is, you can't ever understand what somebody else has been through. And you're describing that experience of having to run through those sounds, be in that proximity to the guns and the shooting and the activity, relive those experiences, and then the effect that it has on you and other people who had their own experiences of trauma with that. How many people would dismiss that because they can't relate to it? And yet they don't have to relate to it, but they do have to respect it. Aaron, you've shared so much with us, and you've been so open and vulnerable with us. I'd love to go to the next question, and we'll work our way through these last three questions in the interest of time here. The next question is, as you look back on the story that you've shared with us and the comma that you've described, what did you learn about yourself as a result of all of this?
That I'm not in control. And the more I think that we think that we are in control of our lives, the more delusional we are. You're not in control. You would hear a phrase a lot. People say, "But by the grace of God, there I go." Speaking of somebody else's situation. Nobody gets up, goes to work thinking that they're going to get shot 5 times. Unless you're in the military and you prepare for that, but not in not in Houston, Texas, not working retail. Maybe somebody cuts you out or something. But I learned that I'm not in control. And the only thing I can really control is whether or not I am going to live out the passion and the purposes and the plan that God has put in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I had already started it, but this just cemented it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here's the real truth. And you hear it and I hear it all the time. You either helping somebody else build their dreams to fruition and become a reality, or you're going to build your dreams to fruition and become a reality.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
that was an exit from corporate America for me. See, what people want is safety. They want to grow old. They want to have a good 401k. They want to have, but you know what? I watched so much get taken away from me. Then I watched so much get taken away from the world. Then I watched people like Madoff that made off with everybody's money.
Mm-hmm.
The pension plan for California for school. I've watched people. I have friends that were multimillionaires that they're living a meager existence, but guess what? They're happier.
Mm-hmm.
They laugh a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
They pay attention to their families more.
We're seeing a lot more people doing this, right? Decluttering, downsizing, dispossessing. Yeah.
And the people that embrace that, I've talked to so many people going around speaking, going around sharing my story, going around listening to others. There's so much I don't have as much as I used to have, but I have more than I've ever had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like an oxymoronic statement, but it isn't. And they're living with purpose. They're living with passion. They're fulfilling their dreams. They're starting a legacy. I know people that have been battling with PTSD, depression. I spoke in Canada at the Ottawa Canada Marathon running weekend. And I remember afterwards, people that was working at the expo, company owners, people coming over to me in tears and just like, thank you for sharing. They wasn't able to sit down and listen, but they heard. And I would minister and talk to people, and people would tell me the number of people that have been shocked that I've come across that have told me, man, I've been through a shooting and I haven't gotten any help. I've been afraid to get help. I was up in Syracuse, New York, the Buffalo, New York shooting. I was up at the Forge Valley Marathon. It's a 4-day event. They got 14 different events. Kayaking, they got a tri event, they got running and all kind of stuff. And there were so many people that were first responders there. So many police officers. I met a police officer from the Buffalo, New York shooting that was a first responder. And I listened to him as he told me even this 2 weeks ago, when he told me with tears welling up in his eyes that after that, going back to work and everybody pretending like everything was the same.
Mm.
And he said he hadn't been the same since. He said, there's been no help for us.
Mm.
I've heard that so many times. I talked to people who have fought wars for us. A man that was in Afghanistan that did the Potomac River Marathon in DC, spoke with him, and he was telling me how he was over in Afghanistan for 10 years. And some of the stuff he shared with me, I had to pray and ask God to remove it from my mind. I would never share that with another human, but he needed to share. I'm 6'2", this dude's 6'5". We're in the middle of Pacers out in Virginia, Arlington, Virginia, in the middle of a store, hugging each other, embracing each other, weeping. We're weeping. We're not just, we're weeping. This man told me, he said, my wife told me she loved me, but if I don't do something, she can't live with me. And he said he came across my story. So he began to research it. And he reached out to me on social media. I encouraged him. He took ownership. He put his own plan together. And I met him at his first marathon, got to meet his wife and his dog, talked to a guy who was at the Ford's marathon up outside of Syracuse, New York. And he was there for his grandson, who was a Marine, who fought in several wars. And he said his grandson telling him, he said, I got to keep moving. That's the only time I feel healthy. I got to keep running. And so he's doing these extreme sports. I said, yeah. He said he was going to get a book afterwards. And so his granddad said, no, I'm going to buy the book now so that he can have it when he finished. And I tell people all the time, Mental Health Month comes up. Men's mental health is in June. Mental Health Month is in May. And I tell people all the time, I said, if you got anybody that's struggling with anything mentally, emotionally, especially PTSD, please get this book for them. If they can't afford it, just let me know. I'll send it to them. I'm like, because this book, I didn't write this book. This book wrote me. And I got stories and stories and people reaching out to me. I had a lady that reached out to me. She's running the World Abbott Marathon. She had 3 more to go. Her dad died. She carried his ashes with her. And we met at the Boston Marathon. We were talking. She gets my book. She ends up emailing me or texting me. And she said to herself, her dad was a Christian. She said, I want to go where he is when I die. She's read my book. She's the memories of her father speaking to her. She's like, how can I know? How can I go to heaven? How do I know? And I told her about the greatest gift that anybody can ever receive, Jesus Christ. I'm like, a free gift to pay for your sins and all the wrong you've ever done in your life. I'm like, that's the only thing that comes close is free race entries for life. That's a runner's joke.
Yeah. Well, you have been a gift to people because you've been able to share your story and you've been there to bear witness to other people's stories and you've been there to acknowledge and validate them like you have sought that validation as well. I feel like you've already kind of answered this 4th question, but I'll ask it in case there's anything else you would add. As you look back at this comma that you sat on and everything that you've shared with us, what's the most significant thing that's changed for you as a result of all of this?
So my comma was sleep. That's the comma. The book was like right before when I thought there was going to be a period, but God, that comma. And that's what I'm experiencing right now. So the sleep was the most significant thing. I came back from Tokyo year before last, where I did not complete the Tokyo Marathon because I got cut off at the hardest cutoff, which is the 11K. And I want to tell people this. When they tell you Tokyo is strict with the cutoff time, they are strict. Getting rest when I came back, able to sleep on a regular basis. It wasn't good sleep, but literally sleep on a regular basis. That was my comma. Now, everything else is but God, it's my new beginning. This is what I fought hard for in doing that quest, to get hope back in humanity, to be able to get away from being under that mountain of depression. I still experience it. Don't get me wrong. I still have the crying spells. Don't get me wrong. The anxiety gets me at times. Do not get me wrong. It still happened, but there's a difference. My barista, his name was Danny in Houston, the Carillion Center. coffee shop. Starbucks shut it down. Shame on you, Starbucks. But he used to work there and he battled cancer. And he literally would have to swing his leg because the cancer ate his hip out and the bone and stuff. He would have to swing his right leg to walk, but he could stand on it. He had to swing it. And one day he told me, he said, you know, you're going to have to live with it and not for it. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? He said, what you went through. He said, one day you're going to have to learn to live with it and not for it. He said, right now, every day you wake up, every day you trying to go to sleep, and everything in between is everything about what happened to you. It's all about what happened to you. He said, one day you're going to have to take it by the hand and tell hell, I'm going to live my life and you're coming with me.
So I'm hearing determination, persistence, like claiming life, unapologetic,
resilience.
And bring resilience. Yes. And bringing it all with you because it's all part of your story. Let me ask you the last question, Aaron. Obviously, there's so much more, and then there's a reason for people to buy your book is to learn more and to contact with you on social media, which we'll get to in a second. But last question, quick answer. What does getting off the comma look like for you?
Getting off the comma, man, it was like taking a deep breath after being underwater for so long. And you never thought you were going to reach the top to where you could at least take a breath. Getting off of that comma was living with a purpose and a passion, with persistence. I mean, I'm going to do this. This is not a question about if. This is only a question about when. When will the story continue? When is the next event? When is the next page? When is the next chapter?
What I'm hearing from you is that it is. It's not even when and if. It is. It is happening.
Yeah, it is.
It continues. Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, this isn't one of the questions, but you've been talking about all these events and you've been talking about your quest. Can you summarize for us, like how many races, how many countries, how many states? Like, give us the snapshot. Where are you so far? Because we know it's just a comma.
Well, the quest was done. I did that in 2022 to 2023.
Okay.
I made it to 46 states, and you know, you got to get the book and just bless yourself, bless others. My total races, I was an ultra marathoner, so those are the ones that I remember, and it was only a couple. But as far as road races, 5K, 10Ks, halves, and fulls, with just the fulls alone, I stopped counting when I was pacing 20. And I did 20 in like 6 months, pace races. But as far as running marathons, I know that I'm somewhere going up towards 250.
Wow.
But in the crowds that I run in, man, that don't even get you in the door. Because I got the crowds I run in, I have friends that hold the world record for the most marathons in a year. Female friends, male friends. I have like these people are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And they're 6, 7, 8,000 marathons. Some of them are on their 4th trip around on the 50 marathon club, 50 states. Some of them are doing double agent twice with the Marathon Maniacs.
Wow.
Yeah. So
amazing.
Listen, if it wasn't for the bullet in my butt, I wouldn't be getting no attention. Because I'm living in the shadow of some great runners.
And yeah, I'd like to challenge that, because that may be true for you, and yet you are the light that casts the shadow for so many other people. Like, let's keep the attention and the focus on you and what you've accomplished. Like, I respect, and it is not my place to question. And that is for you, right, to decide how you compare to others. But let's talk about and acknowledge the model that you are setting, the example that you are setting.
Well, I will say this. This is way harder than running and losing 178 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
This is way harder than me running my first 50 miler.
Aaron, like I said, you and I could keep going for hours, but I'm going to wrap this up. It's going to be in the show notes. You've already sent me the links, but walk us through, where can people find you, connect with you, learn more about you? Give us your handles, give us your platforms.
So at The Running Servant, you can Google The Running Servant, or you can Google Metal Monday, hashtag Metal Monday, hashtag Running Servant, hashtag at The Running Servant.
They can Google The Running Servant, and they can Google Aaron Burros, right, for your Facebook and your LinkedIn. Last thing we do here, Aaron, on the podcast, I do it for every episode, because the podcast is all about lifting up people and lifting voices. And we've heard your story today, and it's an opportunity for you to give voice to people that are important within your circle. So for acknowledgements, it's thinking about people in your circle, 1, 2, or 3. Who would you give a voice to? Who would you like to acknowledge? And that can be a cause or an organization or mentors or somebody that's important to you. Who would you like to acknowledge? And we'll put that information in the show notes.
Oh, man. You put me on the spot. Man, Jatola Blair. There's a lot of people in the running community that know Jatola Blair. Shout out to the Jamaicans. She's from Jamaica, but she's a church member as well. So, and she's a Delta. If I don't say that, she's going to kill me. She's a Delta. But Jatola is the one that really pushed me to start doing a distance running, to stay with it, and challenged me. I would say, of course, the elders of my church at Friendship Community Bible Church. I remember I asked the elders to pray for me. They got together. I went to church. They laid hands on me and prayed for my healing with the PTSD.
Nice.
And then I think I got to say the running community. Shout out to Black Girls Run. They let me serve them the most. Run and serve them the most. I remember Terry Hersey Kisses with Black Girls Run. The M&Ms. Oh man, so many of them just blessed me and let me serve and help them. And I'm just grateful. Katie Fit was very influential. And then I got to give a shout out, I would say, to the Rice University Cross Country Club. They would come out and run at Memorial, the 3 Mile Loop, one of the top 10 running spots in the U.S., if not the top one. I remember going out there trying to hang with them on their warm up. I had already warmed up. They was just doing the 3 mile warm up. And I would be huffing and puffing, and man, those guys would let me hang with them to mile 2, and then they would take off. And then by the time I made it to the end, they was there making sure I was okay before they went out to do their long run. And man, it's just phenomenal. But yeah.
Aaron, thank you so much. Just your story is inspiring. Your story is powerful. Your story is moving. The things that you've experienced, the hardships you've had to endure that many of us probably never come close to, but also what you show us and model for us in terms of how you have come through it, how you've claimed it, and how you have thrived with the choices you've made as a result of it. I just so appreciate you coming on and sharing that story with us. I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you having me. That's the blessing for me to have someone like yourself, to have the comma there, because it's not a period. You're going to continue. And
absolutely.
And that's my challenge to people. Continue. Life is hard.
Keep going.
Suck it up, buttercup.
Keep going. It is not a period.
God put those hills there for you to run.
And this is coming from someone like yourself who has had the commas and come dangerously close to the period. So thank you again. Very much appreciate it. What an honor it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. Think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. Surprises can reveal themselves to you when you do this. And if you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to build connection. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast here on this platform and social media at Off the Comma. And feel free to comment and interact with these posts and episodes. Check out my website for workshops, events, and my sponsor community. I'm covering the costs of production by curating my own sponsors who align with our vision. Be sure to check them out. They're all powerful people and businesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.